While the screaming Valkyrie was distracting everyone at the Goodwood Festival of Speed this year, the brutish Victor was standing guard over another secret Aston Martin. Tucked away behind high walls, up a flight of stairs, and down a dark corridor was a car that some thought might never see the light of day. But after a bit of a revamp, with a new 8-cylinder engine, a new 8-speed gearbox, revised looks, and a lower price, it's back.
Welcome to the rebirth of Valhalla.
The carbon tub remains, and the overall aesthetic is vaguely familiar, but a huge amount has changed under the mostly carbon skin.
One of the things I think is worth mentioning at the outset is that the price has come down. Normally I'd save this to the end, but this is not going to be a limited model anymore. I mean, it will be built in fairly small numbers, fairly obviously, because not that many people can afford a car that's going to cost between £600,000 and £700,000. But that's, well, significantly down from the million that it was projected to cost before. Anyway, styling. So, big thing at the front is that we've now got this vaned grille here. So it's arguably a much more recognisable Aston Martin face on this car. Still obviously got all the air going here, movable splitter down here, so we've got active aero on this car. The air coming up out of there, and this is taking, as the other one was, inspiration from the Valkyrie. Particularly, we've seen one of the updates to Valkyrie was the venting of the wheel arches on the inside here, and that has this here, so channeling the air down the side here, and they've got the side strakes on the side as well. We have got some centre lock wheels. We've got a staggered wheel size, so we've got 20s at the front, 21s at the rear, 285s at the front, so these tyres aren't quite representative. It's having bespoke Michelin tyres developed. 285s at the front, 335s at the back.
Nestling behind those forged rims are carbon ceramic matrix discs, and the Valhalla will have brake-by-wire technology. It will also come with a host of driver assistance systems such as active cruise control, forward collision warning, blind spot monitoring, and a rear view parking camera. A nose lift system will also be included to tackle any awkward inclines.
The interior, we can't see at the moment, but that's going to change in concept slightly from before. So the main thing is that you're still going to have a tub seat. So it's going to be, you're going to sit there and the wheel and the pedals will move to meet you, and each owner will be fitted for their seat. And you're still going to get that lovely feeling, because one of the things I really liked about the concept car, as we're now calling it, is the fact that you had your feet just slightly above your hips in the car. So it wasn't as extreme as Valkyrie, but it still felt really special to sit in that car. And if you remember, that had just basically a holder for a mobile phone, whereas this is going to have a proper infotainment system. It's still going to be sort of fairly pared back, I think. But it's also going to have all bespoke switchgear, so you're not going to get any Mercedes stuff in here. Moving down the side of the car, I love this strake they've incorporated here. Huge amounts of air being channeled into here for the radiators, and then we've got this vortex generator down here, which the idea being to basically jet the air away from the rear wheels. I'll come on to downforce figures a bit. Up in the top, roof scoop. That's changed quite a bit, so we've got two colours in the side, and then obviously induction straight through the middle there. Again, a huge amount of cooling with the vents down here. And what is it cooling? We should get to that, shouldn't we, really? The engine under here, previously it was a V6 that Aston Martin was going to develop itself, but that was going to take a huge amount of money, and Tobias Merz came in basically when, well, I've got this engine that I had at Mercedes and AMG that's fantastic. So 4 litre, twin turbocharged V8, you're thinking that sounds awfully familiar. Flat plane crank, so that's essentially the engine from the Black Series, but again, because there's now a sort of a tighter bond between Aston Martin and Mercedes and AMG, it will be developed with hearing sort of to be a much more sort of bespoke engine for Aston Martin. We've obviously seen that in the past with things like sort of Pagani. Obviously has used Mercedes-AMG engines for years and years, and nobody really complained about that. So it'll be interesting to see what they make that engine into. That's going to develop 741 brake horsepower, so 750 PS. Then we've got 2 electric motors, one in the front, one in the rear, and the batteries for those sit about here, and they add another 201 brake horsepower. So we've got a maximum output of 941 brake horsepower and 1,000 Newton meters. The gearbox, which sits at the back, is wholly new for this car. So it's being developed by Graziano, a new 8-speed DCT gearbox. And the clever thing about this is that, because obviously you've got 2 clutches, you can have the electric motor at the rear running off one gear and the engine running off another gear. We'll find out more about that, I suspect, as we go down the line. Just before we move away, we've obviously got the top exit exhausts here, which look very cool, but also leave the rear of the car free for aerodynamics. So this rear wing now is more conventional. It's going to move up and down. It's going to act as an air brake in certain situations as well. You may remember that the previous car had that sort of flexible skin. It's still a very clean car over the top in terms of its sort of aero. So it's not quite as clean as the concept, but still, yeah, they're trying to avoid having too many sort of bits sticking up. They want to keep the aero underneath the car, as you can see from this frankly enormous rear diffuser with the Venturi tunnels at the back here. So the gearbox is in here, and then just, yeah, it's just enormous. And downforce, they're saying, is going to be over 600 kilos at 150 miles an hour. I suspect it might actually rise from that when they finally sort of put all the figures together, because yeah, you can't imagine it's not going to be more than that when you see this. And projected performance figures then sort of 217 miles an hour, 330 kilometers an hour top speed, 0 to 62 in 2.5 seconds. And the big sort of performance figure, I suppose, is that they're projecting a Nürburgring lap time of 6 minutes 30 seconds, which is fairly insane, to be honest.
That time will presumably be achieved in the Valhalla's track mode, which will apparently significantly reduce the ride height to maximise downforce. The adaptive spring and damper units that will allow it to do this will be provided by Multimatic.
The weight of the car, well, they're aiming for a dry weight of 1550 kilos, which is, obviously not that light, but then it's light given all of the hybrid stuff in the car.
For comparison, the similarly hybridised Ferrari SF90 has a dry weight in standard trim of 1670 kilos. However, the Italian does claim an electric-only range of 26 kilometres compared to just 15 for the Valhalla. It's a small step then towards Aston's first full production EV sports car, which is due in the middle of the decade. The hybrid systems in this are definitely aimed at performance then, but apparently a very involving kind of performance.
For all that, they want it to be very much a driver's car. So despite all the technology underneath it, they want it to feel very much sort of, really connected to the driver, really enjoyable to drive. Suspension, multi-link setup at the rear. We've got pushrod front suspension, taking inspiration obviously from the F1 car. Dihedral doors still, so we've still got the theatre of those. And yeah, I'm glad that this car hasn't just died a death, perhaps appropriate as that would have been for the name Valhalla.
Deliveries are still a way off yet, scheduled as they are for the end of 2023. Plenty of time for Matt Becker and of course Vettel, Stroll and Hülkenberg to hone the characteristics of the new Edith. For now, I'd be intrigued to know what you think. Do you like the looks? Can you see a bit of XJ220 in that rear wing, or is it just me? Are you pleased that it's got a V8 instead of a V6? Let us know in the comments down below. And do please subscribe to the Carfection channel if you haven't already. Help us hit that magic 1 million mark. It really would be much appreciated.